Now, one of the enjoyments of researching any period of history is discovering some of the fascinating characters who lived at that particular time. At least the ones whose stories have survived the long years dividing us, and in particular to me, the Dark Ages. Now, the Dark Ages is roughly a period from 500 to 1000 AD, and it's often associated with a decline in culture, learning and social organisations, when history went dark. Sadly, from this time period, they're usually kings or churchmen, not the common people, due to literacy and record keeping being concentrated among the elite, making their stories the ones that survived. Which is why the elite today want to dumb us down. Now, King Pender of Mercia is definitely one of these elite people. His full name was simply Penda, and he was said to be a brutal warmonger who turned Mercia from a largely unimportant tract of Middle England into the most powerful kingdom in the land. His early life is shrouded in mystery, yet he remains an important torchbearer and principal player in England's history of this mysterious time. Now, it seems very likely that he grew up in a royal household in the Midlands somewhere during the 7th century. And it's believed Penda was one of 12 sons of King Penda, who reigned as a king of Mercia in the final years of the 6th century. And Penda was an Icklingblass from the House of Isel, and he was a legendary figure from the time when the Anglo-Saxons were first migrating to Britain after Roman legions left, and it was said his lineage went right back to Woden. With Penda being a legitimate son of Penda, it definitely gave him the credentials to become king later, although there's some doubt of actually when he gained the throne. Because following Penda's death around 606 AD, Penda was still an infant, and there was another ruler who governed Mercia. Now, it's also possible that Penda was a landless noble of the royal Mercian house, a mercenary of sorts, who spent his early life with his loyal war band as a warrior forging his way to the throne. Now, it seems certain that Penda's rise was marked by violence, and the Anglo-Saxon chronicles record his ascension in 626 AD, which would have made him around 20-year-old, whereas other sources say he became king in 633. But regardless of the date, it was after Cadwallon of Gwynedd combined forces to defeat Edwin of Northumbria in the Battle of Hatfield Chase. And this is what carried Penda onto the kingship. Now, King Pender was a pagan, and due to his continued resistance to Christianity, he is often referred to as the last Pagan King of England. And according to the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, Penda's genealogy traced his ancestry directly to the god Woden, and his military success would have been seen as a confirmation of this divine connection to the war god. And it seems that the Anglo-Saxons often saw rulers' military victories or defeats as reflections of the power of the patron deity, in this case Woden. So Penda's pagan gods appeared more effective in war than the Christian god. Now, in the 7th century, converting to Christianity often meant consolidating power, but Penda appears to have used his paganism for political purposes. His pagan sacred kingship was a way to reject Christianity as a court designed to enforce subordination. Now, when I say sacred or sacred kingship, it's a concept where a ruler is seen as having a special connection to the sacred or supernatural realm. And due to the limited biased Christian accounts of his reign, very little is definitively known about his specific pagan beliefs. Now, most of the history of Penda is filtered almost entirely through hostile Christian sources, which minimise or even demonise his paganism. And the primary source of Penda's reign is from the Venerable Bede, a monk from the rival Christian kingdom of Northumbria. Now, this Bede portrays Penda as a bloodthirsty pagan antagonist who destroyed all he could find with fire and sword. contrasting him with the so-called heroic Christian kings. In the 9th century, he was described as being victorious through the arts of the devil. Now, this demonisation was a standard feature of Christian historical writings about pagan opponents. Now, King Pender showed a practical tolerance towards Christianity within his own kingdom. He allowed his son Penda to convert to Christianity, and he permitted missionaries to operate in Mercia. So it suggests that he either saw Christianity as a viable religion for his subjects but not for himself, as a powerful king, or has just been very clever. This powerful pagan king of the Midlands was a shrewd one, and he was a thorn in the side of Northumbrian rulers like Oswald and his brother Ossory. And there seems to be little doubt that Penda was a powerful and clever king. Once crowned, he managed to hold on to his throne for 22 years. That's a long time for those days. Now, Penda's wife was Queen Sinwise, and she's one of the few early Mercian queens. And as Queen of Mercia, her court was considered to be the most powerful of its day. And she ruled while her husband was at war, which sounds like it quite often. Now, this so-called last pagan king of Mercia, throughout his reign, did what successful Saxon kings did best: made war on his neighbours in order to expand his kingdom. And he quickly became a force to be reckoned with, and some suggest that it was his going power that prompted Oswald to try and take him out, so to speak. Which didn't turn out so well for Oswald, for Penda killed the powerful Bretwalda at the Battle of Maserfield, and adding insult to injury, cut up his body and impaled his head, arms and hands on spears. And as legend tells us, this is where the town of Oswestry was founded. Now, this decapitation might not have been just insulting. It could have possibly been a sacrificial offering to the pagan Saxon gods. And the price of overlordship of all of Mercia and Northumbria was an irresistible one for Penda and Ossory, Oswald's brother. Now, these two kings tangled frequently over the next decade, but it seems in the end Ossory had the upper hand, defeating and killing Penda in 655 at the Battle of Winwade, when Penda invaded Bernicia. Yeah, Winwade is near modern-day Leeds, and his body was said to have been decapitated, which was probably revenge for Ossory's brother. His exact place of burial is unknown, but some think he was buried near his death site, possibly at Worcester Cathedral, where there is a stained glass window depicting his last battle. But given the practice at the time, it is likely he was buried in his own kingdom. But the location of Penda's grave was already vague in the 7th and 8th centuries, because things were really written down in them days. Now, comparing with other Mercian royalties, the mystery surrounding Penda's burial is in stark contrast to other Mercian royalties, many of who were later interred at the Anglo-Saxon crypt at St Winston's Church in Repton, which I'm down to get down there and have a look at. But being as Penda was a pagan and died in battle against a Christian king, he was denied a Christian burial in a consecrated place like Repton. Now, Penda must have been a typical Saxon warrior king who managed to carve out a stable kingdom in the chaos of 7th century Britain. Plus, he must have been very skilled as a warrior in order to stay on the throne so long.